Hello, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of Modesty's Money Masterclass. This is episode number 21 of season 2, and today we're going to be continuing the discussions around the pros and cons of the Isusu thrift contribution system. I hope everybody is well. Today, Monday, the first working day of the week, and there's no better way of starting and kicking off your working week than starting it off, with something that is very intellectual, learning, advancing your knowledge in terms of financial issues and financial management. And what we do here is basically using financial education to liberate people financially. Okay, and coming to the topic of today, but first of all, I hope everybody's well. And personally, I would love to say I am very well, but somehow I feel a little bit different this morning because for those of you who are following me personally on social media, I put up a post today explaining that, why I haven't been able to post my workout session for the week or for the day, because I hurt my I hurt my hamstring on Saturday playing football, and now I can't run. And I love running. Every morning I do my run to keep myself fit and get myself ready for the day. But now I can't run, so probably for a couple of weeks now I'm not going to be able to do my early morning workout. I'm just gutted for not being able to do that, And not just that I can't run, I can't even do much in terms of exercise. Walking is actually difficult, driving is actually difficult, but hey, I'm looking after myself. My very lovely wife is helping out as well, so gradually I'll see how far I can go, because it's the first time I'm having a hamstring injury since I started playing football. But well, it's one of those things. As a sports person, we get injured, but we get back up again and we keep going. But that injury is not stopping me from talking to you, from dishing out this lovely dish on our financial education menu today. And last week, when we started this particular session on Isusu, discussing the Isusu, it proved to be a very, very popular topic, and people appeared very, very interested in hearing more about that. And because of that, we've decided to use this part 2 to actually complete what we started last week and throw more light on things that we needed to throw more light on. Because the Isusu or thrift contribution system is an ageless kind of financial inclusion system that has been there for ages. And because it's been there for ages, you would imagine that at some point or for some reason it will just fizzle out. But it's not going anywhere. And from generation to generation, it has transcended generation. From generation to generation, people still engage in the Isusu system. And it's for a reason. Because something that is useless cannot be transcending generations like that. So obviously there are so many useful things that would have come out of that Isusu system that made people embrace it from generation to generation. So those were the things that we explored. We looked at what Isusu generally is, and last week we defined the Isusu system. So if you're really interested in knowing how we dealt with the definition, please go and watch the video for last week. It's available on our YouTube channel, the Modesty Masterclass YouTube channel. Search out our YouTube channel and subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. You can watch it on our Modesty's Money Masterclass Facebook platform as well. It's there for you to watch, to see, to get a better grip of how we started describing this and the light that we threw on this last week. So we described what the Isusu system is, we gave an overview of what the Isusu system is, and then we also started with the pros of the Isusu system, which are the advantages, what are the useful things that the Isusu system has done or has been able to impact in the lives of people. So we pointed all those out, and then we went on to the cons of the Isusu system. The aim here is to provide a balanced, an objective argument around this Isusu system for us to know that it has its advantages and it has its disadvantages. So we've discussed the advantages, last week, and we were discussing the disadvantages last week, and we said we're going to continue from where we stopped last week. So continuing from where we stopped last week, in terms of the disadvantage, we mentioned, the safety of funds, that the funds are not really safe. We mentioned continuity risks. If it's a group and one person pulls out, the whole thing, breaks down. We talked about recycling of the lump sum. You collect £10,000, for example, as a lump sum, and then because you're committed to continue to contribute, you're going to recycle the same £10,000 into the system again. It really does not add, any real value. We talked about inflation risk. The value of money at the time you received it. If you're in a group of 20 people and you're the 20th person, it means it will take 20 months before it gets to your turn to receive. So when you receive it in that 20th month, within 20 months, the value of money would have depreciated, and inflation would have wiped off, some part of the purchasing power of that currency. That means that money is not actually worth what it is by the time you collect it. It's worth less than what the actual value, the face value is. So inflation, affects that. We talked about, the money having no returns, the opportunity cost of you receiving that money. What if you had invested that money on consistent basis every month, rather than giving it to somebody to hold, or rather than paying it to somebody else's account to go around and receive yours? What if you had consistently invested that? Would you have received a better return than what you had at the time you received it? That's a question. Even if you didn't invest, what if you had just put it in your savings account? Well, no matter how little the returns are on your savings account, it is still something. That's something that we pointed out. Okay, so those are the 5 things we pointed out last week. So continuing from that, number 6 on the cons of the Isusu system is in terms of emergencies. The inaccessibility of the funds in the event of emergencies. So some of the Isusu systems are very rigid in the way they are structured, in the sense that you cannot, if you're in a group, you cannot take before somebody else unless it's your turn. Or even if you're doing the solo type, where the person comes to your shop or your office and collects money, there might be some very rigid system that prevents you from having access to that money before it matures or before the time you agree to collect it. So in the event of emergency, what do you do? And in the event of that emergency, you realize that if you're in a group Isusu system and you want to access your funds before the maturity or before it is your own turn, it will become difficult for you to do that. And what happens to that emergency? What if it's a case of life and death? What if it's something that really affects your livelihood? Maybe your car broke down suddenly in the morning, and that car, you needed to fix it to go to work, and there is no other way you can access funds except that Isusu system. You can see that before you gather the whole people in that system to be able to contribute money for you so that you can take, it may not even be the time of the month when they pay out. So that emergency you could be stuck in that emergency because of inaccessibility of those funds at that point in time. Maybe the group pays out on the 27th of every month, and this emergency happened on the 12th. Getting people together to pay their own dues before the time. Some of them are working, and they will tell you, I can't make my contribution now because I haven't been paid. I pay only when I am paid. So you are stuck in that emergency. But if you had a different alternative where you have immediate access to that fund, in the event of emergency, you can access your funds and then you can make use of that fund. You can solve that emergency and start building up your emergency fund again. So inaccessibility to in terms of emergencies. The next disadvantage we are going to be looking at in the Isusu system here is the legal backing. Okay, the Isusu system is not based on any proper legal structure, really. It's merely a moral contract between maybe a group of people who come together and feel that they share common values, they share common interests, they share certain things in common, maybe even among professionals. And they say, okay, we're a group of doctors. 10 of us, let's come together and be putting aside £1,000 every month, and one person will take it after 1 month down, then to go around the whole of, they agree. They share profession in common. But that arrangement has no legal backing. So if anybody backs out, there are no penalties. If somebody breaks the code, it's just a moral code. There are no consequences for that. And if somebody is supposed to receive this money on behalf of people and transmit it to somebody whose turn it is, and the person receives this money and mismanages the money and misuses the money, there is no legal backing to, actually take legal actions against that. So the absence of that legal backing makes it a very porous arrangement. And even if you are doing the solo Isusu system, where somebody comes to your office or your shop and collects money and writes it down on a piece of paper and hands you a passbook, and if the person disappears with your money, where is the legal contract you signed with the person showing that this person is legally bound by this financial code or by this code of practice? Where is the legal framework that enables you and entitles you to taking legal action against somebody? So it's one of those disadvantages where you cannot actually take a legal action against somebody who has violated a legal arrangement or agreement between you and them as far as Isusu is concerned. So Isusu is guided by a moral contract. It's guided by a moral code, and not really a legal contract or a legal code, and there's no professional code of practice. There is no sort of regulation or regulatory standards by which anybody is held. So if anything goes wrong financially in that arrangement, who do you hold responsible? And even if you hold the person responsible, what legal backing do you have? It means you are risking that money, and that money could be gone down the drain. And then, so I've listened to stories of people who said, I got involved and something went wrong and I lost my money, but you know what? I got to continue. I got to get up and I've got to keep going. I wouldn't, no, you can't just be, what is the guarantee that the next group you're going to be joining are not going to be the same set of people, or not going to have the same set of mindsets, or you're not going to encounter the same problem or issues you encountered in the first group? What's the guarantee? No guarantees. So the only thing that secures you financially within any arrangement are the legal backings, the legal structure, the regulatory codes and standards of practice that are guiding the people or the practice itself. And in the case of Isusu system, that is lacking, and it makes it really, really porous. Number 8 in the disadvantages we are highlighting here is the growth. You see, the fund growth. In the Isusu system, the money you have received, even though you've received that money in lump sum, but has that money really grown over that time? In fact, the money would have lost value by the time you received it. So it's similar to the inflation point you raised earlier on. But in this case, we're not talking about growth. If you are setting money aside, there must be a reason you are setting the money aside. Is that you are setting the money aside to generate you more income, or you're setting it aside to grow in value, which means wealth accumulation, or you're setting the money aside to serve you in the event of emergencies? These are 3 main reasons you should be setting money aside. Okay, so when you set money aside and the money doesn't grow, right? Could you have done something better with that money? Would there have been other opportunities that would have been able to grow that money over that period of time? If you are in a group of 20 people making this Isusu contribution, and you're the 20th person to collect this money in the 20th month, and this, that contribution is £500 every month. In the 20th month, you're collecting £10,000. It means that for that 20 months, you have also put in £10,000 into that arrangement. So are you saying that if you had an alternative money growth mechanism that you would have put £500 aside every single month into an account, that in 20 months it wouldn't have grown at all? There is a possibility it wouldn't have grown at all if it's an investment account, because investments can go up and down. But there's also a strong possibility it would have grown at least a bit. Or it would have grown and come down, and then over a 20-month period, you might have averaged, even if it's an insignificant growth, but at least some kind of growth. So if you have growth in mind, Isusu is not an area to grow money. The only way and the only place you can grow money is through an investment. So if you took that money in the 20th month and the money has not added anything on top of it, it would have regressed even by then. So you're actually poorer in the 20th month than being richer. Because if you are taking that money, even if you have put it in a savings account, and if it had given you, say, £1 growth in 20 months, £1 is better than £0. Excuse me. I'm just, looking in the context of the very poor returns on savings account these days. The savings interest rate these days are really, really poor. If you're in this part of the world, in the UK, it's very, very insignificant because interest rates are really low. The savings rates are really low. But now that the Bank of England are beginning to review the Bank of England rates and interest rates are rising, there is a possibility that banks will review their savings interest rates a little bit upwards to encourage people to be able to bring money to them. Because the banks can either source money from the savings and the deposits they are receiving, or they can source for money from the central bank or from the Bank of England in this case. So if it's cheaper for them to source that money through savings and deposits from their customers, they will encourage their customers to come and save more money by increasing the interest rates. Because that means the money they are getting from the customers will be cheaper in cost than what they will be getting from the Bank of England. So at the moment, the Bank of England is lending them that money at 1%. So the banks might decide to increase interest rates to 0.5%. Because at the moment, it's about 0.0 something percent. In some cases, less than 1%. So they might decide to increase interest rate to 0.5%. So when you bring the money and they pay you 0.5%, they are paying you less than they are paying the Bank of England for borrowing from them. But they are borrowing that money from you at a cheaper rate. So there's a possibility that there will be that inducement and that enticement for people to come and save with the banks because they are offering a good interest rate. So if you had put that £500 every month into a savings account for 20 months, trust me, it would have at least yielded you something. Even if it doesn't cover the value of the inflation, even if it doesn't take care of the rise in inflation completely, but a little bit of growth would have done you some good. But then if you had put that money in an investment account, within that 20 months, there's a possibility that it would have outgrown inflation within the 20 months of that period. There is also a possibility that it would have grown, below inflation, or you would have lost everything. But it's a risk. But what they are saying is that there is at least a chance of growth in that money. But with Isusu, what you know is that you're guaranteed that you're going to get this amount of money, in so time. That's fine. So if you're not interested or concerned about growth, Isusu might be good enough for you. But then there are better financial alternatives. If you're not interested in growth, if you're just interested in safety and lump sum, Isusu may not be the only option available to you. We're going to come back to that later on. So growth is one area that Isusu might not offer you, the best option in terms of financial management. The other one is the uncertainties. Number 9 is the uncertainty. Uncertainties, with the Isusu system, there are human uncertainties, there are political uncertainties, there are economic uncertainties, there are other uncertainties that could hamper or hinder your vision or the reason you wanted to get involved, or what your expectations when Isusu is concerned. Human uncertainties, we have mentioned before that people can decide to pull out of the Isusu system. Out of 20 people, somebody might encounter a financial setback, a financial problem that would mean he may not be able to continue the contribution again. That takes something away from that group. It means is either somebody will be receiving less than what they were expecting, or the whole thing will scatter. Somebody might just receive their own maybe in the 10th month, and then the next month you're expecting them to contribute. They'll tell you, oh, sorry, I had a serious financial issue, I cannot continue contributing. He has collected his own share, but he cannot continue contributing, even though he owes it to other people to continue contributing. But you can't penalize him. You cannot take legal action against him. He's had financial issues and he can no longer continue. So you see, he's backing off. Uncertainties. There are political uncertainties that could actually affect people's financial situation. You may not know that the war being fought in Ukraine is affecting people's individual lives as it stands. If you come to the UK now, the cost of petrol is going through the roof. And it's not unconnected to the war in Ukraine, but people are paying for it. Okay? There are political uncertainties could happen that could affect government economic policies. And those economic policies could not affect people's individual lives. And somebody who was financially well off today could be laid off from their job tomorrow. And they will hit, financial rock bottom. And those are uncertainties that you cannot regulate for. But there are factors that affect the people you are dealing with. And if that happens, what is the fate of those who are making that contribution? If the person, there is no way you will tell me the person will prioritize their Isusu contribution to, for example, paying rent. They'll first of all pay their rent and solve their, their household expenses first before they start thinking of paying your Isusu contribution. Because the Isusu contribution is not a priority for them. And because it's not a priority for them, that's an uncertainty you have to deal with. So those uncertainties could be a hindrance to the Isusu system. Number 10, and the last point on the disadvantages here, is about background checks. Okay? Now, assuming you are in a group of people making contributions for these people, how long do you think it's going to take you to conduct background checks on every single person in that group that's making that contribution? And how would you even know whether one of them is a fraudster or is engaged in fraud or is engaged in money laundering and using that system to launder money or something? How would you even know? Because in this country, in the UK, for example, your bank account could actually be closed down because you received money from somebody who was engaged in fraud. There's a possibility that your bank, if there is a fraud investigation going on and somebody has been suspected of fraud or even convicted of fraud, they will be tracing all the accounts that this person has paid money to. And your account can actually come up as an account that has received money from this person. And the account could be flagged as being a recipient of the proceeds of crime. So the least your bank would do is to close the account so that they can dissociate themselves from that chain of fraud and corruption. And you could get affected because of that. It's something you have no knowledge of. You went into that arrangement believing that these people are honest, but you don't know every one of them. Believing that these people know what they are doing, but you don't know what they are doing. So there's a possibility that among those people that you're contributing with, that you don't know who is involved in what. So it's a risk that you are taking by receiving money from those different people, especially if different people are paying money into your account in 1 month. All of a sudden, your bank might flag it up as money laundering. Otherwise, how can people just, 20 people just pay money into your account all at once? Or it might be that the arrangement is, okay, we'll pay all this money to one person's account and the person transfers to the other person's account. The person that is receiving that Isusu and managing on behalf of others might have questions to answer from the banks. Well, who are all these people paying money into your account all at once? 20 people paying £500 into your account. And if one of them is unclean money, that person is in trouble. And they can then trace the transfer of that funds. Oh, he received this money and he transferred it to this person. Your account will also be under investigation. So these are the things that you need to consider, because these are individuals you're dealing with. And you need to carry out background checks. But then, can you actually do background checks on 20 people? Do you have the capacity? Do you have the ability to do that? Do you have the expertise to do that? Are you even allowed to request for their, personal information? So these are things that we consider that could actually hinder the Isusu system in its current form, because the world as we know it is daily being transformed and changes are occurring every day. Things that didn't matter years ago now are beginning to matter. Things that people did not take cognizance of years ago, they're beginning to be aware of that. And we need to move with the trends of time. Okay, so those are the disadvantages of the Isusu system, which we wanted to share with you today. But it's not all about the disadvantages and all that. I just wanted to summarize the things that we have said last week and this week, okay, to bring all that into a balanced view. You see, Isusu as it is very good as, if it's at the basic level, if the purpose is to learn how to save, yeah, Isusu is very good for you to learn how to save. But the thing with Isusu is that it's not fit for modern day financial management purposes. Isusu is a very good way for people to learn the basic, lessons of saving. But for modern day financial management purposes, it's not really fit for modern day financial purposes. The reason being that there are now better alternatives for people to learn how to save. We have bank accounts that you can open. You have savings accounts, different types of it. So you go into the bank. If you want an account that you will not touch the money for 1 year, you have it. If you want the account that you will have easy access to your funds, you will have it. If you want an account that you will have higher interest rate, but you will not touch the money for 6 months or whatever, you have it. So there are different kinds of savings accounts for different purposes. So even if you are at the very basic level of learning how to do it, you can learn how to do it through the banking system. Isusu is good for the basics. Isusu is good for people who are starting up, but then it's not really fit for if you want to really modernize your way of financial management. Isusu is not a very modern way of doing it. Okay, so anyone who is involved in Isusu, really, who use it to kickstart their financial discipline life, that's fine. But it's like a kindergarten. It goes to a point where you now need to graduate from that level and get on to the next level. So Isusu is good for a start, but you need to graduate. And for you to graduate, you need to move up a bit and move up onto the modern financial system, where there is a legal backing to everything you are doing. There are proper checks being conducted. Your money is safe, and there are regulators who are regulating the banks and the financial institutions. So if anything happens to your money, you know who to hold responsible. And your money is ring-fenced by those regulators. These risks that are involved in the Isusu system far outweighs the benefits in terms of modern day financial system. That's my personal opinion. The risks far outweighs the benefit. From what I have listed here, if you go back and watch the video from last week, you understand what I'm saying. It outweighs it. It has its benefits, it has its problems, but the risks there are far too many for anyone who is looking at it from the prism of modern day financial management system. So, and again, Isusu is great for capital accumulation, right? But the influence of inflation greatly wipes off that capital accumulation advantage. You can use it to accumulate capital for a particular project, but then by the time you want to carry out that project, inflation wipes away the value of that money. You might need to get more money to add to it to be able to carry out the project you want to carry out. So while you accumulate the capital, what happens to the value of the money? Inflation has wiped the value away. So you might need to again rejig, that budget. Now, there is no benefit that Isusu delivers, right, financially, that modern day banking cannot do better with less risk. I can't think of any benefits that Isusu delivers that modern day banking cannot deliver, with less risk as well. So anyone that is interested in money growth and safety will find useful modern tools to do that using their modern banking system. Isusu is a great tool for local financial inclusion. But there are now better financial alternatives to do that. And I hope we take advantage of that. So God bless you all, and keep on doing what you're doing. Continue saving, continue being wise with your money. And I know you will get there in no time. Take care. God bless and see you again next time. Bye now.